Hello, Dish Women's Network. My name is Sarah Cooper. I'm the author of How to Be Successful Without Hurting Men's Feelings, the book that's on your chair. Now, I promise you the book isn't completely blank, and it's also not fiction. It's a satirical book that might also make you cry. That's just kind of my brand. Now, I'm sure you're wondering, where did I get this material from? Well, I worked in corporate America for a long time at Google, so I was surrounded by a lot of dudes. So I really applaud the Dish Women's Network as a great way to champion women in the workforce. Now, I want to introduce today's Dish Women's Network speaker, Dale Hopkins, CEO of InDemand. And she is extremely in demand. She's funny, she's smart, and she is fearless, which is why she shared my book with you today. One of Dale's superpowers is her sense of humor, and that's what you're going to see and hear in today's session. And I only hope you'll enjoy my book as much as you're going to enjoy this talk. So please put your hands together for Dale Hopkins.
If I could just, so I saw this book somewhere. I think it was actually in some newspaper I saw it. Oh, do I need the mic? Okay. Okay, is it on? Okay, so I saw this and I thought, let me do. Immediately, actually, without hurting men's feelings, actually it was kind of a turnoff initially when I saw it, because I thought I don't really like that, but I thought, let me look at it. And then when I looked at it, I was like, oh my God, there's some funny little things in here. I mean, literally, you guys, this will take you 10 minutes to glance at. That's it. It's obviously not going to keep you up at night or do anything. But I just thought there were some pertinent little lessons in here and they're funny. So, and I love her, so I contacted Sarah and told her when Annie asked me to come, and I thought, this book might be good for everybody, just to, it's a quick read, and I think it's funny. So we always got to look at it through that lens as well. So that's my Sarah Cooper story.
Awesome. I mean, I've just flipped through it a little bit, and I'm excited to read it. So thank you for sharing it with us.
You're
and
welcome.
Thank you for being here today. I know this is going to be fun. Sarah Cooper was not lying about Dale's sense of humor, so today's should be pretty funny. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Annie Hovland, and I work in the programming department, which is how I know Dale when she previously worked at Game Show Network.
I called on Annie for many years, so I'm very happy to be here.
Great. Well, let's just jump in and get a little bit more background on your career. So where did you begin, and how did you get to where you are today?
Okay. Do you mind if I stand up sometimes?
Go ahead.
Okay.
I might sit,
yeah,
but you can stand.
Okay. Only because I'm kind of antsy. Okay. As you'll see. So, I have to do the clicker. Thank you. It's too much. Okay. Start as a waitress. Okay. Which I have to tell you is the best training ever. Because you have to deal with the customers, they're always right, you're always wrong, and it just, it was such great training, and you have to get to know people. I actually worked in a country club, so they were the returning customers. They always came back, and, you knew who they were, and you'd get their drinks lined up in the side, and they'd go to the bathroom and do a couple of shots and then go back to their table with their wives or kids or mothers or whatever. So that's where I started. I actually went to UNC in Greeley. I was born and raised in New York, north of New York City, and I wanted to go to Colorado because I wanted nature. And when I came to Denver and started going northeast, I was like, what the hell? I'm going where are those mountains? Like I never visited it before. Like I was just like, oh my God. So anyway, I ended up in Greeley for a year, then went back to New York City, went to school, then came back and graduated from here. So I love Colorado. I'm a huge fan. Rachel was telling me she lived in Steamboat Springs, and one of my favorite places in the world, Steamboat Springs. So that's where, when I graduated from college, my roommate in Greeley was from La Jolla, California. And I went home with her a couple times. I'm like, oh my God, this place is amazing. I'd never been to California. There's flowers on the highway. And so I was like, all right, I got to get my butt back here. And I loved music. And I tried to get in the music business, not performing of all, just on the business side. And I couldn't. I literally begged them. At CBS Records was big at that time. And I begged them. I said, I'll do anything. Okay, you guys, listen to this. They said, no, but we have a job in television. And I was so desperate. My car was broken down. I didn't have any money. So I said, okay, can I apply for that? Yes, you can. You have to take a typing test. Okay, now, I was like, a typing test? So I'm like, oh my God. So she goes, I'll give you a few minutes to practice. So she gives me a piece of paper, and rather than practice, I study the piece of paper. So I don't have to, that I don't have to look at it. I can just, look at it. And then she comes back in to give me the test, and she switches the paper, right? David, do you do that to people in HR? Okay.
Good.
No one takes typing tests anymore. I'm dating myself to tell you how old I am. But I was dying. Anyway, they felt sorry for me. They gave me a job in television. So I started CBS as a sales assistant. And I ended up staying there 10 years. And I literally did anything. Nothing was too big or too small for me. I would have done anything, honestly. It's because I was in sales. I ended up in sales. I didn't even know what those people did. I was like, okay, CBS sales firm. I'm like, do you sell TVs? So it was ad sales. But what I realized going in there was, okay, the only way I'm going to move up is if I move out. I didn't want to leave the company, but I'd try to move up, and they'd say, you really need to, maybe you can move up if you go to Fresno or Bakersfield. And I'm like, you go to Fresno. I don't want to go to Fresno. So CNBC actually was launching, or NBC was launching this business. It actually stood for Consumer News and Business Channel back in the day when we launched. And so I went there as a VP in ad sales, there for like 18 months, got a call from these guys who were starting this channel called E, and said, we need somebody. And so I was like, oh, okay, well, how much are you going to pay me? Honestly, I was driven by money a little bit. I had to pay for everything. I didn't have any family money. I didn't have anything like that. So I said, okay, that sounds interesting. I know it's stupid. My husband says to me, why do you fill your head with all that ridiculous data? But I love entertainment, news, and information. So I went there, and I was there in about a year in ad sales, and the CEO called me in his office and said, we want you to become the CMO. I'm like, are you crazy? I don't know anything about marketing. And they're like, no, it's the same thing as sales. You're selling the customer, you're selling the distributor, you're selling the PR people, you're selling. I'm like, all right, if you're willing to take a chance on me, I'll work my ass off. And I did, and it was such a great experience. Such a wonderful experience. We did everything from Talk Soup to Howard Stern. We did not do the Kardashians. That was post me, so you can't blame me for a decline of Western civilization. But the point was, I loved it, and then we were sold. And so we had a chance to stay, and I could have stayed. And the lesson there was, I could stay and mosey along. I'm happy. I love the people, but I wanted to learn and keep learning and doing something. And, at E, we also started the Style Network that now is defunct. I started E Online, which was back in the mid-'90s. I went to my boss at the time, and I said, hey, listen, we got to start an online news and information site because we own the brand, but we don't know anything about building a site. Nothing. So, and this is one of the lessons I've learned. I learned later in my career, I wish I learned earlier, is that if you don't know something, it's really okay to find people who are going to help you, rather than, they're going to think less of me. I'm not that good. I should be smarter. The first thing I did was, I'm going to go find somebody who knows about the internet space that we don't. And I found these guys in San Francisco called CNET. This was in the early days of CNET, and we formed a joint venture. So they were the back room, and we were the front, and it was the best thing we could have done. And then few years later, we bought them out of the JV. It was just a really good experience. I got so that's what got me into the online space. I left E and went with one of the founders of CNET and started a company called iWin.com, which was a games for prizes site. Women, you play games, you get points, you get prizes. It's great ride up, sold it. And then I ended up going to G4 because I'd worked for Comcast for some time before. Comcast was a part owner of E. And they said, hey, this guy's got this idea for a channel, this gamer channel. But we don't know him, but we need our own people, and their Comcast is very big about that. So I went and became head of revenue for them and ended up becoming the COO for a few years. And then that was all acquired and put all the, NBCU networks together. This was before NBC and U. Yeah. But so I took a jump and I went other places and did some other things. And, I won't bore you with all that. But the point is, I felt I had to move out to move up. Unfortunately. But you know what? after I did it once and then I did it twice, it became a hell of a lot easier. You know, because I was really sad. When I left to eat, I was crying going to the parking lot, literally with my box. You know, I just had such a good time. But that's kind of my career background. I was at GSM where Annie and I worked a lot together with a lot of people here at Dish too, and I got a call from these people and said, "Listen, we have a job in New York, a CEO job. Would you be interested?" And I said, "Well, can I do it from here? Can I do it from LA? I'll go back and forth. I don't mind." They were like, "No, the place is a mess. You got to be there." And I thought, okay, I'll throw my hat in the ring. And then it came to be. So fast forward, I moved to New York, did it all in about 3 weeks. And I've been there. New York is so rough. Oh, my God. It's such a rough town to live in. I grew up north of the city, but I never lived in New York City. It's really rough. I mean, it's rough on your skin, your feet. It's really tough, but I'm having a great time. It gave me an opportunity to do something new and learn something, and that's a big thing about myself that I can impart on you. You need to keep learning. You need to keep learning. You cannot get comfy in your jobs because as the world is changing, and actually Dish helped the world change a little bit. You know, with the introduction of Sling a few years ago, they were the first. You guys started something really, really big in the industry. So anyway, that's my background.
Awesome.
Okay.
It sounds like, too, every one of your steps to a new role, you were approached. It sounds like you didn't do much searching yourself.
I
Is that true?
never got a job by applying for one, like online or anything. First of all, applying didn't exist when I started. but I think that's a good point is developing the relationships in anything that you do, whether it's your children's school or, you know, your job or whoever it may be in your community, in your church, because you know, that's who I happen to be, so it's easy and natural for me. Some people, it's not something they want to do, and that's the other thing. You have to really realize, what do you want to do? What do you really want out of life? You got to be true to yourself in that.
Right.
Yeah.
So pretty much you've been in the entertainment and media industry your whole career. Which one of these organizations or roles has most shaped you professionally?
Every single one. Every single one. I'm not kidding. I never had a horrible boss. Yeah, difficult bosses. Who doesn't? You know, but I never had, when the whole Me Too thing happened, I was like, God, nothing ever happened to me. Nothing ever like that happened to me. Then I kind of felt sorry, started feeling bad about myself. Like, you know, it's like shit. But every single one I took away something from, and that's something that I try to say to you guys is you got to take every job, even though you think it may be less than you deserve or less than where you feel you should be at this time in your life or whatever it is, there's always something to take away from it. And you got to go, okay, I'm all in. Let's march ahead and figure it out. Let me just show you this. A friend of mine sent me this card for my birthday last month, and I just thought it was funny. You know, he wrote, Dale's dad, Dale. Skip to the part where the princess climbs to the top of the corporate ladder. You know, because they were always taught, you know, and, you know, I'm sorry to the guys in the room, but to the women that, you know, maybe we don't deserve to move up. Maybe you should be just fine where you are. You could be a mother. You could do everything, but you may be, you know, not be able to move up in a company, which, of course, everybody here knows that. That's not true. You can move up, and it's evident in Dish, obviously.
So did you always want to be a CEO from this age? Did you
know?
know?
I never, you know what? I never thought about it. I never really thought everything was a natural progression for me in evolution. I never, ever thought, I want to be a CEO by the time I'm 45 or anything like that.
Right.
By the way, I thought about that with getting married, about having children. I always believed that things will happen the way they're supposed to happen, and I know that sounds really kumbaya-ish, but I always believed that whatever's meant to be is going to happen. Of course, you can direct it and help it and shape it and mold it, but, you know, I never thought about that, Annie, ever.
Interesting.
You know?
Well, here we are today. You are president and CEO of InDemand, which I know is one of the leading pay-per-view and on-demand distributors in the industry. But can you tell us a little bit more about the organization and your role there?
So it's transactional. We're back room. We're owned by Comcast, Charter, Cox, some of your competitors. Okay, so we're owned by those guys, and we have 200 plus other affiliates. We do business with from everything from Maltese to Frontier. So we do all the back room for anything transactional on your TV. If you're one of those subscribers, whether you rent a movie, buy a pay-per-view fight, whether it's boxing, the Manny Pacquiao fight last Saturday night, which you guys, I'm sure you did that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Or, renting Despicable 2 or something. So we do that. So we license. We do about $1 billion in revenue comes through our door every year, and we're governed by those 3 companies. So it's a real service-driven business. It's 100% service. How can we be better service partners for our owners and our other affiliates?
Right.
That's all we try to do is be. I'm not trying to figure out how Manny's going to make more money or anything like that. I'm just making sure that Showtime has the best event and that whoever's carrying that event has the best experience. So that's what we do.
Got it.
Yeah.
So what's
You got to come visit. Anybody comes to New York, you got to come to our office.
Yeah, it's a nice office.
Yeah,
I've
Annie's been there.
Yeah, it's a great view. So what's a day in the life of Dale Hopkins like?
Okay, it's so different from being in L.A. Oh, my God. Okay, I went from living in a house to a tiny apartment. I used to get up and exercise 5 days a week in L.A. If I do it 5 times a month in New York, it's a lot. I've gained 14 pounds since I moved there 14 months ago. Gained a pound a month eating pizza. I don't, and everybody goes, yeah, but you walk in New York. No, yeah, you walk, but you don't do anything. You freeze. So I get up, I look, I go, it's dark, it's miserable. I'm going back to bed, and I don't exercise. So and then I walk to work. It's 1.1 miles there. I walk back and forth, which is good. I've only fallen twice. I broke my glasses one fall. I literally, it was big, in front of a McDonald's, no less, where all the homeless live in New York. So then I literally work. I work 24/7, but I work from 8, and everybody leaves there. It's like a mass exodus at 5 o'clock. Like when I first got there, I go, what are the official hours here? And they're staggered, but everybody's out. People travel so far to get to our company.
Right.
Like they'll be traveling 90 minutes on a commute one way. It's like crazy. It's crazy, but it's busy and it's good.
Good.
So I had to get in and basically get into this company and kind of reshape it. They were not focused enough on our consumers and our users, and that's what we had to shape. Okay, my first day at the company, I walk in. They knew I was coming. I had met the whole group before. We are on the 17th floor. I get in the elevator, push 17. There's only one woman in the elevator, and she's going to 17. So I said, oh, do you work at InDemand? Yeah. And I'm like, oh, God. I go, how do you like it? Right. Like, literally her head's on her shoulder. I'm like, oh, boy. So then I walk in, and there's a lobby, front desk. And one of the HR offices, David, you'll love this. It happens to be right there. On the HR office is a poster, movie-sized poster of a suicide hotline. I'm like, oh, my God. What kind of place is this? So, right away, I was like, okay, this woman in the elevator is can't shrug enough. And so it's taken me a year to kind of change the culture. It's taken me I had to get rid of a lot of people, but we also had to, set a tone and an environment of one of concern and care, and so it's been interesting. So it's actually been a tough year.
Yeah.
But it's good. It's been good. Always up for a challenge. Okay, I should fast forward to these, Annie, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, let me go back to this. Okay, I really mean this to everybody. You have to, and I know it seems so. Be true to yourself. But, you really do have to ask yourself. I used to ask myself, all my girlfriends and I used to talk about this when we were in our 20s and 30s. What do we really want? Do we want to move up the corporate ladder? Maybe you don't. By the way, that's fine. Whatever. You have to figure out, what do you want? Are you driven by money? Are you driven by lifestyle? Are you driven by, okay, I want a 9-to-5 job. I don't want to get email when I leave. Mm-hmm. I just had a really good friend go off the grid, and her big thing was, I don't want email at night. I don't want any email at night. She's living in Kauai right now.
That sounds nice.
But so that you really have to figure out what you want. Do you want to, have a family and work and have it both, and that's the biggest thing, is being honest with yourself. And who cares what anybody else thinks about what you want to do? It's up to you. So that's the one thing, and that's where I felt I was a bunch of our friends, when I was coming up like you guys. You have to really be, and what you may want is different from me. I was just talking to Rachel. Do you know she was a sheriff in Steamboat Springs for 13 years?
Cool.
I'm like, what? And it's just amazing how you make life decisions, right? And what you do, and you do it for the right reasons, right? Very, very, very important, I think, and I think, Annie and I have talked about this before, is to keep learning as much as you can. Whether you listen to podcasts or you read, watch, you should not stop learning ever, 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 ever. The world's moving, Dish is moving with it, Sling's moving with it, but you yourself need to be up to speed in everything it is, whether it's skiing, hiking, technology, whatever it is. You need to really, you cannot be left behind, okay? And so there's so much content out there. My son, I was in LA this weekend, and he said to me, Mom, you got to listen to Joe Rogan's podcast. I don't know, did anybody here listen to Joe Rogan's podcast? Okay. You do? You have. And he was just telling me I should watch it because one of these fighters, Fury, from the UK, he said it was just such a great interview. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, now I got to listen to Joe Rogan. So that's the kind of thing you got to keep moving, and
Right.
and reading. So I do. I read so much. I follow so many people on Twitter. I never tweet, but I follow a lot of people. For me, it's a really good source of information.
Yeah, that's good advice. So how are some ways, you've talked about staying true to yourself, how are some ways that you do that?
Okay. Thank you, Annie. I can't believe we're on track.
Trying.
As I said, I live with curiosity. I really do. I that's interesting, whether it's Joe Rogan's podcast or whatever it may be. I really try to go, well, that's interesting. I try not to go, oh, I can't be bothered. Let me go watch Law and Order again. So that, you have to, that's one thing I do very much. And I talk to everybody. So, because I think I learned from everybody.
Very
I love
true.
this. Dear teacher, I talk to everyone, so moving my seat won't help. So that's really, really important. I think you learn so much by talking to people. Where I'm looking around the room, there's so many people in here that have so much knowledge. You need to share it, and you should be a freaking sponge. Just soak it up. And I just love this. So my boss told me, dress for the job you want, not the job you have. Now I'm sitting in David's office in a disciplinary meeting dressed as Wonder Woman. That's how you should live, right? That's what I believe, And then, of course, you're going to have days like this, right? Yeah. Like suffering. Extreme case of not being Beyonce, right? Who doesn't have that on a monthly basis? That's a card, actually, I sent to my daughter. So she loves Beyonce. Okay. Annie, I don't know what the next question was, but what is it?
I think there's a couple more slides on be true to yourself.
Okay. So, this is my family, and the reason I put it up there is because Annie even knows this. My work and home life, they're not separate. Yes, certain things are separate, of course, but really, people who know me know it's my husband Christian in the middle, my daughter Holland, and my son August, my dog Coach, Frenchie. And this was our Christmas card. But I God is great, beer is good, and people are crazy. At first I hesitated, but that song? Is it Billy? It's a country song.
I've heard it.
Come on,
I
you
don't
live
know
in
who the artist
Colorado,
is,
don't you?
but-
Yeah, thank you. But so when you really look at it, it's all in one to me. If anybody could follow my dog on Instagram, he could use the followers. Okay, little pig in the big city. This is his revenge jacket from the last Drake tour. He's a Drake fan. Matter of fact, he says on his Instagram, I like Drake. I think was one of his hashtags. So please follow him because he could use the followers. He doesn't post that much. So we could use him. The weirdest dog I've ever had. I've always had big labs. It's the weirdest dog. I like this saying, and I wanted a younger female in the picture as opposed to an older person, is that always remember, you're a badass. You are. You're here, you're working for a great company, in your own way, however you want to show it. You are special and should always know that. Even if you had a bad day, your boss didn't think you did this, or you're having a problem, disciplinary problem, whatever it may be, always know that, hey, Charlie, how you doing? Heck. Okay, we're talking about having fun at work, Charlie. So this is, I know, don't worry.
Just wait.
Yeah. Chris, for Halloween, we dressed up at work with Halloween. This is me as Conor McGregor, if anybody doesn't know. Conor McGregor started his own whiskey. I don't drink, so I don't know, but they say it's terrible. So anyway, it's just so fun. Again, at the workplace, it's something that you should be always doing. And then we're talking about being true to yourself, and when in doubt, dance it out. Like just, I don't know if anybody watched Grey's Anatomy back in the day, but that's what they would say too, right? When you just go, okay, I can't deal anymore. I'll deal with this tomorrow. Yeah. Just dance it out.
So, pivoting a little bit into your current role as president and CEO, you've talked about having to change the culture a lot. And so, one of the important things about being a strong leader is having a strong team. How do you develop and keep talent?
Having walked into a company a year ago that was kind of a mess, really looked at what the challenges were for us and what we had to do. They were kind of sleepy. It was a sleepy place. People had been there many, many years, which is not a bad thing. But when you're not challenged, you need to be challenged in your jobs. You need to create them yourself. Your boss needs to create them. I know David works on that a lot. You need to have challenges, right? And as a supervisor, boss, CEO, division president, whatever you want to be, that's something you have to create for your team. And you as a team member have to do great stuff. You have to perform. This is not, you are lucky to be here. You're lucky to have these jobs, but you have to do something great too. Mediocre work is not acceptable for me, my company. And so you do have to do something great, and you have to reward people. I'm a big believer in that. I grew up in sales. So sales, if you performed and you did great stuff and you made things happen, you were rewarded. Whether that would be financial or other things, that's something that was always driven.
Right. So what are your thoughts on how we drive more women into the C-suite?
Mentorship. You have so many great people in this company, and you have so many great people who either worked at this company or gone, or people that you may do business with, partnerships that you may have. You need to have mentors. You do. You need to have rabbis. As many as you can find. You're lucky if you have one. You're really lucky if you have a few. That is something that I think is really, really important. As a young female, when I started out, there was a couple I didn't know they were going to end up being my mentors, but that I'm still in touch with, regularly. Something that's really important to me. So when I'm stuck in a place, I do call them, and say, hey, and I'm honest. You have to be honest with your mentors as well. Sometimes I go, I feel bad. I'm going to look stupid, or I didn't do something, or you have to be very, very honest with it. Again, talking about being true to yourself. I think that's really important. Okay. No drama. Okay? Women get a rap sometimes about drama. Save the drama for your llama. I put this picture. It's got nothing to do with Warren and drama, but he had a llama that he brought as a good luck charm to our poker tournament we did once. So I just thought it was funny. I do have this in our office outside in one of our hallways. No drama. There's no room for that. He said, she said. Forget that. There's no room for that. You could do that wherever you do it. It's not appropriate in the workplace. You're here to do a job. This is not personal. It's you are here to benefit the company, hopefully yourselves, but the shareholders, etc. That is your role. All right, Charlie, I had no idea you were going to be here, and I'm kind of embarrassed, but this applies everywhere in any company. I took this picture once. I did ask Allison way back when if I could take it, but it applies everywhere. It's the rules that hang up around this company. You should know your business. You should be prepared. Do it right the first time. Think long term. Spend money like it's your own, and then you need to freaking own it. If you do it, you own it. And yeah, we're going to make mistakes. We may always do it right the first time. You learn from it, and you pick yourself up, and you figure it out. But that These rules are appropriate anywhere, any company. Principles. Oh, he's softening up in his old age. Charlie? Yeah, God bless him. He was such a great guy. I made a joke earlier about Me Too. You have to think of yourself first a lot, and the company, of course. But when you're thinking of your own personal career path, you should think, okay, again, going back to what do you want? Where do you think you'll be the happiest? Where you can add the greatest value? What is it? So I was just thinking it's like me first. I don't mean that in a selfish way. I mean like me first and nobody else. I don't mean it that way. I mean the best way you can contribute to the organization, to the company, where you can then hopefully reap rewards, is if you figure out what makes you the best employee and the best person.
Yeah, I think
I'm jumping ahead.
Well, no, you're pretty much on schedule, but a little bit more into that. So a lot of studies show that women compared to men struggle with advocating for themselves. So how have you been able to overcome that and advocate for yourself and your career? And then also, how do we, as women, do that for other women, help them get out of that mentality and make sure they're owning and stepping up and getting the credit that they deserve?
Okay. You have to be super fluid and adaptable. You cannot go, well, wait a minute, it was this way, I got to stay in this lane, you have these blinders on. No, you have to be fluid. The world is changing, everything's changing so dramatically, you have to change with it, and you have to be fluid and adaptable, and that is the way that you're hopefully going to change within the organization and as especially the media landscape changes. So I think that's really critical, and don't get so hung up on, well, they said I was supposed to do this, or this is my job description. So that's why I'm really careful when I write job descriptions or have our HR head, right? It is so, there you need to be able to adjust to anything that's handed to you. So I believe in that. No job is too big or too small. No job. I walked my boss's dogs when I worked at CBS, literally, and I did it with pride, and I was like, he's like, listen, I'm going away this weekend, and, I'm sure today's something, you can't even say that today. I'm like, I'll walk your dog. I don't care. You need your cat vet. I mean, literally, I did it for almost 10 years. What people would look at today and go, I can't believe you did that crap. But I did it with a smile because it was important to them. And if it's important to them, it's important to me, and it meant something. So I think that's really important. Even when we hire assistants or entry-level employees, we say, listen, you need to be able to not mind getting lunch for somebody if we want to order lunch and you have to get in your car and go get it. Or if Eric needs something, you have to be able to walk to his office and be able to talk to him. So no job is too big or too small. And I think that's something you have to realize. They say, oh, that's beneath me. Nothing's beneath you. You shouldn't think that way. I don't believe in that. And I also believe you shouldn't beat yourself up too much. People do that. We all do that in our jobs. Oh, God, what was I thinking? I'm going to look so stupid or whatever. Like, you don't beat yourself up. Tomorrow's a new day. You get up, and get ready. And I saw this in a restaurant in Philly, and, pour yourself a drink, put on some lipstick, and pull yourself together. Like when things are not like where you feel you're beating yourself up, just get it together, snap out of it, come in the next day, and be ready to rock and roll. So I think that's really, really important. You shouldn't be afraid of anyone, like especially as you're coming up. I think sometimes we get fearful of the leaders or the higher ups in the company. Don't be afraid of any. You have some of the smartest people in this company who are accessible to you. So smart, and you shouldn't be afraid of, oh my God, here comes Eric, or there's Charlie. Like, you should
say hi.
You should take advantage of them, okay? You work here. Pick their brain. They like to talk about themselves. They like to, they like to tell you how they came up.
Everyone likes to talk about themselves.
Yeah. So don't be afraid of anyone. Don't be afraid. I did that early in my career. I was afraid of, I was like, oh God, I shouldn't go up to him or I shouldn't go up to her. Like yesterday, I read a great article in the Wall Street Journal in the sports section. And I wrote, how everybody has their email at the end of the article. And I wrote the guy an email yesterday on the plane. And we had this huge exchange back and forth. Jason Gay, I don't know if anybody, it's such a funny article. It's about the Patriots and the Rams, and oh God, not the Patriots again. It's that article, and it's just so funny. And it was just so you shouldn't be afraid, because what's the worst that can happen?
Yeah.
They're dismissive, and that's not going to happen here, right? Don't be afraid of anyone. And this is a good example. Charlie, I put this and Warren in there as an example. Again, the people, this was a poker joke. You don't ever be afraid of anybody in a room, even they're so high up. No, that's, you should take advantage of that. Take advantage of them.
So I think the next few slides are about work-life balance, which you've touched on a little bit. That often comes up in these conversations, but if you could just speak a little bit more to how you think about balancing both work and life.
See, I don't look at it that way.
Yeah.
I'm just who I am, and I work 24/7, and I think about it, and I care about it. And yes, I'm married and I have children, but I've always been able to meld it where I never thought, okay, here's my work. Okay, now I'm in a work mode, and I'm going to go home, and I don't think about it. Never in my life have I been that way. Can't be that way. So when I saw that question, Annie gave me, I was almost like, what do you mean? Plus, I love Justin Bieber, so I love that song. What do you mean? So I loved it. But that's how I felt. And what you end up doing in all your jobs, whether it's internal or external, you end up making partnerships with people, right? Or vendors or whatever they may be. In Annie's particular job with programmers, you end up going, okay, what's right, I feel, what's right in the end for the consumer? Right, so, and maybe it makes sense for us to do business together. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it makes sense at a certain level, at a certain cost, whatever. But so, to me, people that I've worked with over the years, I have actually become friends with long after they're gone. And actually, I put some pictures in here. People who used to work here, I'm still very close to. Thea, who used to work in your programming department. Remember Jared? And Collins, I love them. Still talk to them all the time. Will Rosser worked in marketing. He's drinking. He doesn't. It was a joke. There's some, but
It's taken with a selfie stick from Dale.
oh yeah, that was fun. Surta, who I loved. I just had lunch with her recently. I put Andy in here because I love Andy. He still works here. Remember Steve Swain? That was his son. So I just think it's, to me, there is not I know this is unusual for people and it's hard to comprehend. But there's not a difference between my life is my life. That's work and play and family and partners and everybody. So
Yeah.
that's I don't separate it.
Got it. So one more question for you before we open up to the floor for questions, but just some general parting advice you have for us in the room who are looking to excel in our careers.
Okay, this is dumb and elementary.
I don't think that's done.
But like when I was putting together, I go, kind of looks stupid. But you should always carry a paper. I know you have your phone. I know you may have your tablets. But even as an assistant, I'd be running around with my little paper and pen because you think, I'll remember it, I'll forget. But it's thoughts, things that may come to you. Oh, he or she said that. I should maybe do this. So I tell my kids are both in their early 20s, and I'm always trying to teach them. And my son's like, I don't need a paper and pen. I'm like, you do. Now he's in sales, and he hates it, but he probably won't be there long. But it's something, I think it's basic, but I think it's something you should always do. Don't ever get comfy. You get comfy, you're going to miss stuff. As a company, as a person, obviously this company doesn't get comfy because Charlie and team set the way, but you don't ever get comfy in your job. Because you get comfy, you don't learn, you don't get out there, you don't help. You also all of a sudden become, not such a need on the team. Don't ever get comfy. Always raise your hand. I'll do it. I'll take it. Let me have it. I think. Now, again, that may go against your nature, but it's something you should do. Hey, and by the way, you may not know everything that you're going to talk about or you're raising your hand for, but you know what? You're going to find out. You're going to get into it. You're going to figure out what needs to be done. You're going to do a deep dive into whatever it may be. And so it's something I believe you should always do. Don't be the one who, what do I have to do? You want to be the one like this. Raise my hand and act. You can't sit back. Sometimes, I like to act fast. I had this coach once. One time we did coaches for our teammates, and one of the things he said was, I had somebody who worked for me, who felt I worked too fast. And the coach said to him, listen, you don't have to have everything in a perfect box with a bow on it. That's not how work or life works. You know, if you get 70% of it close, you're good to rock and roll and move forward. So I'm a big believer in moving, because I feel if you move, things will happen and you'll learn quicker. Focus, simple, right? You got to focus on what's ahead and what we should be doing. Take risks. I think it's something that your company does extremely well. As I mentioned earlier, you started such a market change with Sling. So I think you need to take risks as a company and as an individual too in your own career. You need to take risks. You're not going to move ahead if you don't take risks. And by the way, moving ahead may not be what you want. That's okay too, right? We can't have all people trying to move. Or as my mom would say, you can marry rich, you know.
Last resort.
My mother used to say that all the time. God bless her. She'd say, you know, you can marry a rich man as well as a poor man. So she always wanted us to marry. Her big thing. We were raised Irish Catholics. My father thought we were the Kennedys. We had 10 kids in my family. And my mom wanted us to marry Jewish doctors. That was her only goal in life, is that we would marry Jewish doctors. I want to thank Annie for having me.
Thank you, Dale.
This is from like a year ago, I think.
No, it's actually just like July.
June
or
July.
This
Okay,
past
Annie was
summer.
in New York and came to our offices to see us.
Yeah.
So thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, thanks for being here. With that, though, we'll open it up to the floor for questions. Who's got the first question?
So you talked about taking risks. What is one risk that you would say, like, I'm really proud that I took this risk?
I think it was, when I look back, I think it was when I was telling you I was at E and I was the CMO, and we thought we should launch E Online as a service because we had the entertainment news and information, but we knew nothing about technology. This is back in the mid-'90s. And literally, you know, all other networks at that time, ComedyCentral.com would be literally a schedule. This was on at 8 o'clock. And I thought, I don't know anything about technology. And so I went to my boss, and it was hard. So I went to my boss, and I said, listen, we should do this, but I don't know how to do it. That's hard to say to your boss sometimes, right? I don't know, because you want to be the one who knows. That's what they hired you for. So I was like, I don't know what to do. And I said, but I think we should try and go and find a partner who has that expertise. We have the entertainment news and information piece, but I don't know how to build it. I don't know how to do it. He said, okay, go see what you can find. And, you know, we started talking to people, and we ended up doing a joint venture deal with CNET out of San Francisco, who did all the back room. We formed a JV company, 50-50 at the time. And they were experts in the space. We were experts on the other part. And literally 8 years later, we unwinded the JV. And Halsey Minor, who started CNET, still says to this day it was one of the best JVs he ever did. So it was fun. So that, I think, is where you took a risk. We're like, okay, we don't know what we're doing, but we got to jump in somewhere, but not try to own it, you know, and do it, you know, yourself, because we didn't know. And no one in the company was really interested in it at the time of doing it, because they were busy trying to do Hollywood True Story or something. Or the red carpet at the Globes,
right.
You know, something, you know, ridiculous, but which we all loved. But so that's probably the, you know. Another one was, honestly, we had Howard Stern on E. And the only reason we did a Howard Stern deal was because Howard is a great self-promoter. And every Monday, I would give Howard an index card. Actually, I wouldn't give it to Howard. I'd give it to Gary Delabate, his producer, and say, here are the 5 things I want Howard to mention this week. And Howard would say it, right? Would talk about all the shows we had. And he was always so great about it. But we couldn't sell Howard. No one ad sales wanted to buy Howard because he was controversial. He said a lot of bad things. And so we knew he was just strictly a promotional tool, you know. And so that was a risk, too, going, okay, do we hire this guy and pay him a fortune? Because Howard does not come cheap. And for us, it was a fortune even, you know, or do we kind of just sit back and, you know, and then we put cameras in there, and then it just started, cameras in the radio shows. Don Imus did it, and then everybody started doing it, and it became big. But Howard was the best self-promoter I've ever worked with. And so that was risky because we had the National Organization of Women come after us. We had all these people chase us, and I'm like, oh, my God, what am I, you know. So, but that was risky, but it ended up paying out for us, which was good.
Earlier on, you talked about never saying no to a job and always taking new opportunities. And I was wondering what advice you would have for those of us that do have jobs that might have only been a year on their resume. Because I know when I interviewed here, someone asked me why I had 2 jobs on my resume that were only a year. And I just like the opportunities at each new job. And I wanted to know how you can be genuine when saying that you wanted the new opportunity. But I think a lot of times when you're interviewing, people want to know that you would like to stay for years and years and years. And it's shifting now. I think it's more normal for people to be hopping jobs, especially with like LinkedIn and everything. But how can you be genuine in saying you like new opportunities?
Well, what you hope to have happen, and where I've done it myself, that it's actually worked, but it was all kind of organic. It wasn't, I didn't plot it, is that you hope to do that, but stay within the organization. So you can hopefully move, and I'm sorry, David, if I'm sure David's big on this. But yeah, we'd rather, listen, we invest in employees, right? In any company, you spend money, you invest, you're in. God, I hate everybody to walk out after a year. We called E University because we paid so poorly that we knew people had to move out because they couldn't afford to stay there much longer. So we were a training ground. But as companies get bigger and you have so many more things to work on, you hope actually that you can stay within the company you're at. Right? So you can raise your hand and say, hey, I know I've only been in this job a year, but I think I can add value over there. And by adding value, I can do X, X, and X. And hopefully, and I'm sure David and team see that. So I think that's one that's really, really important. I used to think about jobs all the time, like, not all the time, because one thing I tended to do in my career was I kept my blinders on a lot, too, which is not a good thing. But I was so dedicated at the moment to this thing. And what happens is, like I'd say to my husband, well, I'm thinking of, there's this job open over there, whether in the company or external, but I don't know. I've heard some things about them, and I'd go on why I didn't want the job. And my husband looked at me and goes, oh, were you offered a job? And I said, no. He goes, oh, so you're turning down a job you haven't been offered. I said, so it's just such a good awakening, right? You have to figure out where you can add value and then try to, my advice always to everybody is to try to stay within the company if you can. Because you're invested, they're invested. We like to keep turnover as minimal as possible if it makes sense. And sometimes it doesn't make sense. Sometimes you got to leave. Sometimes you do got to move up. Move out to move up. And maybe you come back. That happens too. I just had somebody leave us in my office in New York, and I said to him, I said, listen, you're welcome back here anytime. Like it doesn't work out or things change. That's something too. That's the kind of employee you want to stay, right? Anybody else?
Other questions?
Yeah.
So you talked about being the CMO and marketing was like an unventured area for you. Yes. How did you balance learning marketing on the fly and earning the trust of people as well? Because at the later stage in life, I'm the CMO, I need to learn some marketing techniques. At the same time, I don't want to ask too much to seem like I'm a newbie.
Okay, that's a good question. Okay, so I was telling the story earlier that when I was at E and I was in ad sales, and the CEO said, I want to make you the CMO. And I'm like, are you crazy? I don't know anything about marketing. And he said, listen, it's sales. I'll help you through it. What I learned very quickly, not quickly enough, actually, but, in a good amount of time was that I was not afraid to ask for help. Like, let me give you an example. We had this is probably you'll probably look at us as terrible people. But when we were at E, we did the OJ trial reenactment on our air. It was just huge ratings, huge success, horrible to think about, right? Yeah. But we did it. And then we had the ACLU come after us. And here we were, this entertainment show, like ACLU, like we're so out of our league. And so they were attacking the president. His name is Lee Masters. His real name is Yaramone. But Lee, I was like, Lee, oh my God. And here I was in charge of PR for the company. I said, I got to hire somebody. I'm so out of my league. I can't deal with these, I can't go on CBS television and talk about it. I just can't, it's not in the company's best interest. So I actually went and hired a message person who does nothing but message delivery, and he actually he's awesome. His name is Michael Sheehan. He's out of DC. He coached everybody from Hillary to Bill and everybody in between. He's really fabulous about getting your message together and making sure you hit the points you actually want to hit in the media. My point on that is I wasn't afraid to say I don't know, because I knew in the best interest of the company it was not smart for me to pretend I knew. So you can't do that. You can't do that for a lot of reasons, right? So that's very, very important to go, you know what? I don't know about fonts and creative and that kind of stuff. So I found the best creative person I could find, and we established a good relationship, and we actually went to 3 companies together post that. So that's what I did. I just said, okay, I got to get right people around me. You hire people around you who are smarter than you, right? I know that's an old saying, but it is true in a lot of ways. You just hire people who have expertise that you don't have. That's a good leader.
All right, we probably have time for one more quick question if anyone has anything left.
So it sounds like when you arrived in your new job, it was a pretty negative environment generally. So I guess my question for you is just, how do you deal with people you might run into throughout your career who might be particularly negative or not receptive to learning new things or aren't curious?
That's really, honestly, I don't got time for that. You just can't, you can't have those people in your organization. You can't have them around you in your personal life. I'm a lot older than everybody in this room, but I have done that with even friends in my life. Like, I just can't have him around me. He's negative. When I'm with them, I become something I don't like about myself, or things happen. You just can't have it, and it's painful to dismiss, to separate yourself, whether it's an employee or a friend. It's painful. There's this one guy, I have done this through my life. I haven't seen him in 10 years, and I had to do it. But I still think of him a lot. I really like Jim. He was such a great guy, but I couldn't have him around me. It was too much drama and too much trouble, and it didn't work. So you really just have to remove that. It's a cancer, right? You have to remove it. You can't have it around you, because it will bring you down. It will bring your department down, you as an individual, your company. You got to get rid of it. And by the way, I know this may sound cold, but they're better off for it too. Not just you, but they're better off. They're not happy, whether it's in a job or in a personal situation. They're not happy people, so they need to go and do something else too. And I've run into people post and they say, oh, the best thing you did was fire me, or whatever it may be. I don't know if they're honest, but you do things, it's for the better. Life's too short. I learned that later in life too. It is.
All right, well, thank you, Dale. This has been awesome.
Thank you for coming, everybody.
Yeah, thanks for coming, everybody.